Hi guys, today we're going to be working on making our books, and one of the first things that I wanted to talk to you about as an option for this is getting creative with your pages and with your corners. So one of the options that you'll have for this project is going to be to cut your pages to make them a little bit shorter. Now we don't want to go too crazy with this because we don't want to end up with our pages being too tiny, but we can start first by going to our last page and cutting off a tiny little strip. Now you can decide if you want to cut straight or if you want to cut at an angle. It's up to you. If you want to cut maybe with a design, it's up to you to decide. I'm just going to cut mine pretty straight. Okay? Now the next thing we can do then is we can take our next page and we're going to cut it just a little bit shorter. So I'm going to come in just a little bit further and start cutting this one. And what you're going to notice is that we're going to get kind of a stacked look where we can see all the pages by the time that we get done cutting everything. So we'll be able to see all the pages from the front to the back at the same time. So you can see here now I can see this page and I can see the flap of that page. So you notice that those strips are getting a little bit bigger and the pages are starting to show kind of all the way through. So this is one kind of creative way that you can do this. And I could finish all the way to the front of my book. So I've got just a few more pages left that I could cut as well. Another option though, if you want to get the same kind of an idea, is to cut the corners of your pages. So you could also start by just cutting the corner a little bit and cutting a little more and a little more and continuing that way where you'll just end up with your corners kind of cut off at the end. So that's just one option for you as you continue to work on these. Now you can see that I can see all of my pages. They are short and they get a little bit wider as they continue until we get to the back cover. So that is an option for one way to customize your book, and we're going to continue to look at other options as well. But one cool thing I wanted to point out with this option is that you can also use these little flaps to give more information to the person who's looking at your book. So you could add something like maybe for this example, for maybe you start at your year you were born, and then you could add the other years going up. Going down the strip here, you could add maybe the title of the story that you're going to tell on each page. So it's up to you to kind of creatively incorporate this into your story. Hi guys, today we're going to talk about adding a pocket to a page of your book. So if you want to add a pocket to your page, the first thing you need to do is get a separate piece of paper so that we have one to cut and glue on that'll create the front side of the pocket. So the first thing that we're going to do with this is we are going to cut our corners just a little bit to create what's going to be called a tab. And so I'm cutting at a diagonal line from the corner. So you can see here that I've got that cut in a little diagonal on both sides. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to take those that little flap that we just created there, and we're going to fold it forward. And so I'm going to fold forward from those two little spots there, and that's going to create what's going to be the bottom of our pocket. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to fold in from the side. We're going to do the same thing over here. Then we're really going to want to crease these nicely. So I like to pinch those kind of between my fingernails, make sure that they're really nicely creased so that our page stays as flat as possible. All right, now you can see that we've got these little corners. It's up to you what you want to do with those. If you want to, you can tuck them back up and in. Sometimes we wrap those around the inside corner, so you can see a corner here. That just makes it a little bit more secure. Otherwise, you can cut them off. So it's up to you to decide what you would like to do with your little corners. So I'm going to wrap mine around just to make it a little bit more secure, and then I'm all set to go. The next step that we're going to do is we are going to take our glue stick and we are going to put glue on the sides of our pocket. Now if this is the pocket size that I want for my final page, then I can just leave it. If you want it to be a little shorter, you could always cut it down, but I'm gonna leave mine nice and big. while I'm gluing, I want to also kind of talk to you about what's good to put in this pocket. So these pockets are going to be good for like sliding in a picture, maybe a note or a letter from someone that you want to save. They're not going to be a good thing for three-dimensional objects because three-dimensional objects are going to push your page forward, and it'll make it so that your book can't really close. So we want to make sure that we are using this for things that are pretty flat, that don't take up a lot of space. So I line it up where I want to, and then I'm going to push down, and I'm going to go back and forth quite a few times here just to make sure that it really gets stuck down. You guys might remember our gluing trick, so we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I hope it sticks. And I'm actually going to do that a couple of times here because since I'm rubbing rather than kind of holding in one place, I want to make sure that we get it really, really stuck down. All right, so now you can see that our pocket is attached, and I've got this little spot here. I'll flip it kind of up. So I've got this little spot here where I could slide something in. So I could take another piece of paper and slide it in. I could add a picture into that little pocket. One thing you are going to want to make sure though is that you plan according to what you're going to put in your pocket. So for example, if my picture was going to stick way out of the book, I might need to find a different picture so that it will fit right into the pocket and won't get damaged when we close the book. Hi guys, I wanted to talk to you today about something that you can add to your book, and this is going to be called a lift the flap. And so a lift the flap is kind of fun because you lift it to kind of see something that is underneath. So this could be used, you know, maybe your picture's on the top of the flap and then your story's underneath. I'm going to show you kind of an easy way to create a lift the flap. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to cut my piece of paper. Obviously it's really important to make sure that you think about your size. If you're worried about cutting straight lines, it's also a good idea to fold your paper first, right? Line up the edges and then fold it. That way you know you get nice straight edges. And then we're going to fold that paper right in half here. Now we've got our little flap here, and so the last thing we have to do is we've got some gluing to get this attached to our book page. So I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm going to put glue on the back side, and we want to use plenty of glue because this is going to get tugged at a little bit, and so we want to make sure that it's on there nice and snug so that it stays together. So again, when we use a glue stick, you just twist it out a little bit so just a little bit of that purple is showing, and then keep on going. You'll know you need to squish out some more glue when you end up hearing kind of a scratching noise or feeling kind of a scratching feeling from your glue stick, the plastic rubbing against the table or the paper. All right, so I've got plenty of glue on there. Now I'm gonna take this and I'm going to put it wherever I think it's gonna fit best on my page. And I'm gonna really stick that down. So again, we might remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I hope it sticks. I'm gonna do even more than that, just making sure that I really push it down, even using my fingernails a little bit just to kind of push that down to the page. All right, that looks pretty good. So now I've got my little flap here. So when you turn to this page, you can look at what's up here, but then you can flip it and get more information. Hi guys, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some ways to attach pictures into your book. So the first thing I wanted to really point out to you is that it's always a good idea to mount your picture onto another piece of paper that's another color just to kind of offset it. And you want to choose a color that matches with the picture. So in this picture there's a blue blanket, so I'm going to use a blue background piece of paper. The first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to put some glue on the back here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the corner of my paper, leaving the same amount of space on the side as I do on the bottom. I always like to use the corner of a piece of paper for this because I know that these two edges are already cut really nice and straight. Now that I've got it glued down, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off, and I'm going to try and make it about the same size on the other two sides as it was on the first side. There we go, and now it looks like my picture's in a little picture frame. Then when I go to add this to my page, I can put it wherever I'd like, and you can decide if you want to do it straight right in the middle or if you want to maybe put it twisted off into one of the corners. It's up to you to decide. I think for mine I'm going to put it up in one of the corners. I added some glue on the back here, and now the next thing I'm going to do is flip it and again push down to really make sure that it sticks. I'm also gonna make sure that I don't put it over the fold of the book because that's gonna make it really hard for the pages to close. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is when you're adding some writing into your book, that I really recommend you doing that on a separate piece of paper first. And so I'm gonna give you an example here. So let's say on this piece of paper, I just wanted to write a name. By writing it down on a piece of paper first, I can check my spelling and make sure that that's right. And then when I glue it down to the book, I know that everything is in there correctly. If I wrote right on the page and I spelled something wrong, there's not much that I can do to change that. So doing it on a separate piece of paper and gluing it in is always a good idea. I'm gonna cut that out. Again, I used the corner of the paper, so I made sure I had two really nice straight sides. And I'm just gonna finish it off by cutting the rest of the rectangle. If I want to, I can also cut a little off on this end just to make sure that the spacing is pretty even. Now I can decide where I want to put this, so I could maybe put it down here, I could maybe put it up on this page, maybe even overlapping it over here if it doesn't cover up too much of my picture. So it's up to you to decide where you want to put it, and then you want to make sure, of course, to use enough glue before you stick it down. Hi guys, today I wanted to share how you can use other shapes when you are creating pages for your book. And so for this example, I'm going to use a circle. And I really like this because you can create your own design on a piece of paper and then add it into your book. And so for example, on this one, I maybe decide that I want to make an initial. So I'm going to start by making the letter N. And I could add some decorations around it. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, much like we can do with a picture, we're going to mount our circle onto another piece of paper before we glue it down. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put this on top. So when we glue something on top of something, we call that mounting it. So we're going to do that with this. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm just using a recycled piece of scrapbook paper for this today. I'm gluing that down again, making sure my spacing is pretty even from this side and this side so that I can cut it out. And I can decide, do I want to put my circle inside of a square or do I want to turn it into a circle? And for this one, I'm gonna make it into a circle. So I'm gonna cut pretty evenly around the outside as close as I can, trying to make it about the same distance all the way around. Doesn't have to be perfect, I just want you to try your best. All right, so now I've got my little circle here, and I can add that into my page. So these are kind of fun to put with pictures, or if you've got some extra space to fill, maybe in a corner. Another cool thing that you can do with this is you could write maybe a quote from the story that you're doing, or maybe a favorite quote that you know, maybe from a book or from a famous author. So that's a nice way to add something interesting into your book. Hi guys, one of the cool things you can do when you're creating a book is to create a stamp that you can use to repeat itself throughout your book. So for this example, I'm going to be doing one of a bunch of triangles. So I'm cutting out my triangles first. All right, I think I've got plenty of triangles. And then I'm gonna take my foam backing, or the sticky backing, sorry, off of my foam piece, and I'm gonna stick it down to, this is a piece of what's called mat board. So it's a little bit thicker. And I'm just gonna make kind of a random pattern with mine. One thing that's important to remember when you're making a stamp is that it doesn't matter what color foam you use, because the ink that you use is what's going to make the color on your page. So for this one, I am going to, I think, do my ink in orange. And so I grabbed my Mr. Sketch markers and I'm gonna go over the foam, and I'm gonna do this kind of quickly because I don't want the ink to really dry. I'm gonna go back over some of those first couple ones just to make sure they're nice and wet. All right, and then you should always test your stamp on a separate piece of paper first. So I have one of my scraps here from earlier, and so I'm going to take my stamp and I'm gonna set this down right on top of it. Once I set it down, I'm not gonna wiggle or wobble it, but I'm gonna push really, really hard down, making sure that I get all of those little triangles pushed against the paper. and then I can lift it up and you can see that I've got a really nice stamp there. So the cool thing about this is then I can take my stamp again and I can go back over it with the Mr. Sketch markers again, and I could add another stamp. And then I can decide also if I want to cut this one out and glue it into my book, or if I want to just stamp directly onto my pages now that I know that I like the way that it looks. So it's up to you to decide what you would like to do, but this is kind of a fun method to add some patterns and designs into your book. Hi guys, one thing I wanted to show you today that is going to be an option for your project is going to be to use pearlescent watercolors. So these are kind of like normal watercolors except that they are a little shimmery, and one of the cool things about them is that they also show up on black paper. So this isn't the kind of material you're going to want to use if you want something that's very, very detailed, but it is kind of a fun material if you're making something simple. So for example, if I wanted to make a house, maybe talk about a time when I moved somewhere new, I can use the pearlescent watercolor and you can see that they show up really, really nicely on the paper. So I'm gonna maybe make just a little house. And add a little roof. So like with normal watercolors, I'm only getting what the colors I need, and that one's a little darker than I thought it was gonna be, so I'm gonna grab another color here. Wash my brush before I change colors, just like always. I'm gonna make it blue, I think, instead, just to make it pop out a little bit better. So fill that in. And then one of the things that I love to do with this is it's fun to make swirls. So if you think about like Van Gogh or the painting Starry Night, right, we can add lots of nice swirls in the sky with these. The shimmeriness of the watercolor makes it extra cool. And then I could wash my brush off and switch even to another color. Maybe make some little yellow stars in the sky. And if I wanted to, I could even add some grass on the ground. So again, not super detailed, but kind of a fun way to add something unique to your project.